Lovely to be here, and greetings from the other side of the world, down under. I say to you, g'day. So let me start with that. So this is my favourite verse, or at least one of my favourite verses, is that I have come that they might have life and that they may have it more abundantly. John 10:10. I've always loved this. Even when I was just a young kid, this was the verse that really captivated me, because I was always interested in, what does abundant life really look like? What does it really look like to live this full and abundant experience? And so it turns out, as a Christian, I was interested in that, but then it turned out my career moved in that direction as well. And I've had this fascination I suppose I have a bit of a science brain, but what is it? What does the science say about what we can do to truly live abundantly? And I'd love to explore that with you this morning. And what you're going to see as we go through is that all of the latest and greatest scientific discoveries on this topic can actually firmly be found, where do you think? In the good book, in the Bible. And I find that incredibly affirming. So let's start. I want to introduce you to this character here. This is a gentleman by the name of Professor Morton. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of this guy before. Okay, we've got about 3 hands. All right, this is good. We're all going to learn new things here. So Morton, interesting guy. In 1997, he was voted in as the president of the American Psychological Association, the APA, which is a pretty big deal. And at that time, they say to you, what would you like to be the theme for your presidency? What would you like to study? What would you like the association to focus on? And so he gave some thought to this, and then he had this little epiphany moment where he said, and he declared, he calls himself a nimbus cloud, right? This is a storm cloud. He says, I'm a grouchy kind of a character. And he said, I was out in the garden, weeding my garden one Sunday morning, pulling out these weeds, not enjoying life. I hate weeds, they suck. And anyway, my 5-year-old daughter walks up behind me and she says, Dad, and he's like, yeah, what do you want? So I'm pulling out these weeds, and she keeps saying, Dad, because she wants him to turn and actually look at her. And eventually he turns, he goes, what do you want? And he's throttling these weeds. And she says, Dad, you know how when I was 4, I used to whinge and whine and whinge and whine? He's like, yes, I remember, get on with the story, what is it? She says, well, you told me I had to stop whinging and whining, and I did. So now it's your turn to stop being such a grouch. And he said, he went, oh, and then the light bulb moment. This is what he came to this conclusion. He said, I realised that as a psychologist, at the absolute top of my game, just been voted in as the president of the American Psychological Association, I didn't have skills in that. I'd spent my entire career, and all of my colleagues had done as well, was all focused on mending misery, right? Trying to help people with some sort of thing going bad to just become okay, to become normal. I don't know what normal is, by the way. If you're normal out there, I'd love to meet you, all right? So I'm not quite sure that fits. But he said, when as psychologists, do we ever actually help people to do better than okay, to thrive, to live more abundantly? Or the name that he gave it, to flourish. What does that look like? And he launched a whole new branch of psychology pretty much. And there have now been thousands of studies done, literally, that have studied this whole idea of what does it take to live abundantly? What does it take to truly flourish? And so he actually came up with this little acronym. And the acronym is PERMA, right? PERMA. And this represents these 5 things. If you distill down all of this research, it seems that there are 5 things that we humans need in our life to truly flourish. And it can be represented by this acronym PERMA. However, I love the 5 things, and I'm going to share with you what they are, but I don't quite agree with the order that he presents them in. And I've got my reasons for this, and I've met Professor Morton. I've actually presented at conferences with Seligman, and I sat down and said, Professor Seligman, love your work, except I think you should change it. And he's like, oh, okay, tell me about that. And so we had this discussion. I said, I think instead of PERMA, you should reorder it into this. And anyway, we had some discussion, and he said, I'm not sure that I agree with you, because we academics argue about everything. He said, but with my blessing, you can change the order. So I have. So PERMA, instead of PERMA, it is now Okay? Now, I know that my English is not that great here, so it's not how you spell it. It's just a visual to help you to remember, okay? But this is PEARM, P-E-A-R-M, and it represents the 5 things that we need to flourish. I'm going to share with you what they are one at a time, and I'm wondering, can you guess ahead of time what you think these 5 things that we need in our life, we humans need in our life, to truly flourish and live abundantly? So, let's start with the P. I'll get you to call it out, but maybe it will get a bit noisy in here. What do you think P might stand for? People. Did someone say pain? No? I hope I didn't get pain. Well, here it is, all right? Some good answers out there, I'm sure, but here it is. It's positive emotion. All right, so the science actually suggests this, that what we humans need in our life is some positive emotion in order to live abundantly, right? It's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it, right? We all like to feel good. It feels good to feel good. And so positive emotion is actually a really important thing. And God has provided for that, right? There are a whole lot of positive things that we can do to actually experience more positive emotion. And in fact, for those that have been participating in the Lift Project, that's what it's been all about, giving you some science-based skills to experience that. However, what the science is also teaching is there is a problem if you just only pursue positive emotion for positive emotion's sake. And I'll share this little story to illustrate what I mean. When I was a little tacker, do you have that saying over here? You know what I mean? Okay, so I'll have to dial down my Australian isms. So when I was a little person, I attended this little country church, right? And we literally, on any given day, there would be about 13 people in the congregation. And there were 4 kids, right? So there was myself, my brother, who's 3 years younger than I, his name's Jason. And there was two twins, all right? Literally, true story, Adam and Eve, all right? Of course. So we got Adam and Eve, and then there's me, and then there's my brother Jason. And so our Sabbath school teacher decides that for our 13 members of a congregation, she wants to put on a church play. Right? I'm thinking, there are 4 of us. Like, I was only little, right? But this just wasn't adding up. But she said, no, we're going to do this. And she was all into this. She was into theatre. She loved all these sorts of things. So she said, right, we're going to put on this play. It's going to be amazing. So I want you kids to audition for parts. And I'm thinking, serious, like audition for the parts. There's 4 of us once again. Anyway, after our auditions, I gave it my best shot. And I was given a non-speaking, non-moving part, all right? So it speaks volumes about my level of talent, all right? So anyway, my brother was given a speaking and moving part, and he was 3 years my junior, which I was very, very upset about. But anyway, Eve got the part of Jesus, right? She was tall, she, played it well, obviously auditioned. And then I'm not sure what Adam got, but anyway, he was someone. Anyway, I remember there's this critical moment in this play that we rehearsed and we had to go there for months practicing this thing. It was the moment that we were going to shine. And I remember our Sabbath school teacher, she was sitting up the front there where Icky was beaming, like this is the moment we've all been preparing for. Anyway, the play was going okay, right, because I was doing my best just to stand there and not move and not speak as I'd been instructed, dressed in my sheet, the long sheets, because that was very fashionable in biblical times, apparently. So I'm standing there on my sheet like this, and Eve was beside me, that was Jesus, and then my brother, it was his moment to shine. He had to, from the back of the church, run in and call out and say, Jesus, Jesus, the Romans are coming. Right, that was his big line. And I still remember this. I've this vividly ingrained in my brain because it was quite a narrow little aisle down the centre of these, few scattered people, but these ornate pews, these big handles on the side of the pews. And then all of a sudden, my Sabbath school teacher, she's looking up there and she gives my brother the nod, who's also in his sheets, ready to race down the front. She's giving him the nod. And my brother Jason starts running down and he's full of the joy of living here. All right, so there's a lot of speed, a lot of enthusiasm, and these sheets are billowing out behind him. It's like something out of Chariots of Fire. It's like, dum, dum, dum. And as he's running and he starts calling out, Jesus, Jesus. And as he got to the part where he was meant to say, the Romans are coming, I saw this billowing sheet behind catch on one of those corners of the pews. And all of a sudden, the tension sort of started to take up, and then it pulled tight right around his neck. And I remember this as he went, it was more like really deep from down here. And then his head paused in about this spot. His feet kept going. I saw the bottom of his shoes, right, literally. And then he's like, bang, and he's hit the ground. And he's got up, and I remember him staggering, and he looked over, and there was little Miss Wadsley, right, about 97 years old. And I remember my brother looking at her thinking, did she just coat hanger me just then? It felt like she'd taken him out. Anyway, he's like staggering around. And now, I don't know about you, right? But when I see my sibling, he's my flesh and blood, get injured like that, I lose it, right? So I'm like this. All of a sudden, I'm making sounds. And I'm not meant to make sounds in my part. And I'm like this. And he's looking. And my mum, she's a bit of a character. She's sitting there and she sees the funny side of it. So she starts chuckling a little bit and and then all of a sudden this thing starts to spread, and then it went belly up when Jesus lost it. And all of a sudden, and we're laughing, and my poor Sabbath school, this was her moment of glory, and this whole thing has gone nuts. And we laughed and we laughed. And I remember driving home in the car, we're still laughing my stomach was killing me. I'm laughing so much. But we laughed a bit more the week after, and then a little less the week after that. And today, when I think about it, it was funny. There was some positive emotion attached to it, but it's not the same. And this is what the science tells us about positive emotion. It fades, right? Pleasure is never permanent. Laughter is never limitless. And hence, if we try and build an abundant life on just good times and thrills, we're actually destined for discontent. This is what the Bible says about it. Take delight in each light-filled hour. And I like that. You know what? God has given us these positive emotions for a reason. They're good. It feels good to feel good. Right? Do that. Go after. Pursue positive ways to experience that. But remember, there will also be dark days. And we all have dark days, don't we? You're addicted to thrills. What an empty life. The pursuit of pleasure is never satisfied. It actually, in the scientific literature, we said it habituates. You need bigger and better thrills if you try and build a life around the pursuit of pleasure and just positive emotion alone. So what does that mean? Well, it means if we want to live abundantly, we need something more. We need E. And what do you think E might stand for? I'm not actually going to get you to call that because I don't think you're going to get this one, even if you did. But here it is, it's engagement. What the science says is that we humans need to do stuff that engages us, right? That we actually enjoy just for the sake of the activity, right? No one actually has to force you like, hey, go and do that. It's like, I just love to do that. Right? For me, I mentioned that I love to do adventurous stuff outside. I hang glide, I kite surf. Just the other day, we were at home. I was out in the middle of the ocean, it felt like. I'm like a mile off the ocean. I'm on my kite surfer. Everything about this I love, right? It's just, and you're in sync, the wind is waves, it's just, and I am singing at the top of my lungs. And let me tell you, no one wants to hear that. But it was just like I'm there, and there's something about those moments, completely engaging. In fact, the word we give to it in the scientific literature, we talk about being in a state of flow. You know what I'm talking about here? Right? And what is your flow moments? What does it look like? Right? It's different for different people. I am not musical at all, but I love your work. Let me tell you, you guys are totally amazing. And in fact, the researcher that did a lot of the work on this whole experience of flow has a fascinating name. It is Mihail Csikszentmihalyi. That's his name, Csikszentmihalyi. And he's a happiness researcher. Figure. And this is what he did. He actually wrote a book called Flow. And this is what he writes. He says this flow experience is when you're completely involved in the activity for its own sake. No one has to force you to do it. The ego falls away. Time flies. Have you ever had these moments where you're doing something, it's just like you look up and you're like, whoa, where did that go? All right, that's these flow moments. Every action, movements, and thought flows inevitably from the previous one. And then he finishes with like this, and I love this. This is for your sake. like playing jazz. Now, I don't know anything about jazz. I've never played it. I've listened to a bit of it. But, I imagine that as musicians, you get in that, there's something going on there. Those moments of flow. Well, what we know is that we need those experiences in our life, right? So whatever it is for you, give yourself permission to do a bit of that. It actually contributes to abundant living. And the Bible is big on this. Actually, this is one of my favourite quotes in the Bible. This comes from the Message paraphrase. And I have this on my office door so that my students have to read it when they come and see me. This is what it says. Make a careful exploration of who you are and the work you've been given. And then sink yourself into that. And so what it's saying is, don't be impressed with yourself. Don't compare yourself with others. Each of us must take responsibility for doing the creative best we can with our own life. That's what engagement is about. As much as you're able, if you can find a job that engages you, that is a wonderful thing. That's a beautiful thing. But if your job doesn't engage you so much, at least have those hobbies, those things, those moments of doing these things that just you do for its own sake. And it adds to an engaged and abundant life. But just like positive emotion, which is never permanent, you can't go through your life being 100% engaged all of the time, can you? You're going to have boring moments, right? If you haven't figured that out already, you're going to be bored sometimes. You're going to have times where time drags, right? And so if you built your life and the pursuit of abundant living on the pursuit of, pleasure and engagement, once again, you're going to be set up for failure. You need something more. You need A in this PERM model. And what does A stand for? A stands for achievement. We know that we humans actually love to achieve stuff. We love to master stuff. Raise your hand if you get that great sense of satisfaction of getting a job done. Right? You tick it off, yep. I know what you're talking about. So it's yes. And what's really interesting about this, and this is why I put A as number 3 down the list, is that in many ways, A, that sense of achievement or accomplishment, trumps positive emotion and engagement. I'll give you an example of this. For the athletes, our athlete, we just heard about our athletes up the front here. You talk to an athlete who's involved in, say, an event. They're doing some race, like these endurance race. And you say to them, hey, was it fun? And they're like, no, it wasn't fun. Was there a lot of positive emotion attached to it? No, there wasn't. It hurts. It was actually it was painful the whole way through. And you say, oh, were you engaged? Did time fly by? And it's no, it didn't fly by. I didn't think the finish line was ever going to get there. I was I just want the finish line to get there. But as soon as they get across the finish line, it's that sense of accomplishment, that sense of achievement, all of a sudden adds value to your life in some way. And there's actually what's really fascinating. So in some ways, having that sense of accomplishment, achievement, trumps a positive emotion and engagement. And what's interesting, and there's something about the way we humans are wired in this regard, is that actually enduring hardship, right, actually having to do it tough, adds to the value that comes with accomplishment. Right? And so don't shy away from doing it hard. Right? If you have to actually put in the effort, right? That's when the accomplishment starts to really come alive. Quick story, when I turned 30, right? This is over 20 years ago now. But when I turned 30, I looked at my life. I had this, you have these early life crises. And I sat there and I thought, wait a sec, what have I done with my life? Because my dad, he is a super practical guy. He's an electrician, so he's a tradesman, and he built houses and he'd fix cars. And when I turned 30, I was just finishing my PhD. I'd done nothing but write these really, really boring theses that no one was ever going to read. Literally, no one's ever going to read. If ever you come to Avondale University, young people, you might want to tuck this away. My thesis is in the library, and there is a $20 bill in my thesis. I go there every year and open it up. It's still there, all right? No one's reading this stuff, all right? No one's reading it. So I just spent all of my life writing, doing all this sort of academic work, and I thought, what have I done with my life? Look at my dad. He's a real man. He does stuff with his hands. So I said to my wife, Sarah, Sarah, I think I want to build a house. And she's like, that's not a good idea. I said, yep, this will be my demonstration of manhood. And she's like, oh, no, this is going to end well. And I'm like, yep, watch this. And so I read a book, because I was good with books, on how to build houses. And then we bought a block of land, and then I drew some plans, and somehow I got those plans accepted and passed. And then I got a hammer, and then I got the stuff I needed. I literally banged every nail in with a hammer, right? And I can tell you, do you think there was a lot of positive emotion attached to the process? No, there wasn't. Do you think there was a lot of engagement, like those flow moments attached with this process of building a house? No, like everything literally took 4 times longer than I thought it was. But here's the interesting thing. Today, when I stand back and look at my creation, there's an immense sense of pride. Anyone's welcome to stay with us if you ever visit Australia. Come and join us. That's actually not my home. Here it is. Here's my home. Look at this. And there are my 3 kids when they were little tiny ones, but they're all big, grown up now. But you know what? My house, look at it. Doesn't even lean that much. But you know what? Honestly, it wasn't a lot of positive emotion, not a lot of engagement attached with the process, but I had to do it hard. Right? I had to struggle. I had to learn new things. But there's that sense of accomplishment, and it adds to your life. So achievements, what things can you achieve? What things can you go after? It will add value to your life. However, just like positive emotion and pursuing that unrelentlessly, and just like engagement, chasing after things you're engaged with, achievement too has its pitfalls. The Bible says, God says, achieve stuff. 6 days, labour. This is a good thing for you. Right? And in the sweat of your brow, do this stuff. It's good. There's value to it. Ecclesiastes, I love this. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your mights. Right? Do it. Get into this stuff. However, because I know what you humans are like, you're going to go nuts with it. Right? You're going to get on this achievement, like goal-orientated. There's never going to be enough. Right? So I'm going to put some boundaries around how much you can do in this space. And I'm going to make a divine mandate that says 6 days show your labour. But one day, it's tap out time, right? It's time to prioritise the truly important things in life, like your spirituality, your relationships, your health, your well-being. And so achievement, is it a good thing? Absolutely. Learning a new skill, learning a new piece, mastering it, fantastic, do it, right? But realise it's not the pathway to truly, deeply abundant living. We've started with the superficial, now we start to get to the real deep stuff. What does it look like to truly start to flourish? Well, we know that people need R, and I think you might actually get this one. What do you think? What's rest? Relationships, there we go. It is. You sound surprised you actually got the right answer. I think my slides are going a little bit peculiar here. I might have to tell this story. The slides are gone? Slides are gone. All right. So here we go. We're just winging this. So R is for relationships. What we know at the heartbeat of human experience is that we are designed to be relational. Right? We need each other to be our best and to do our best. And so the extent to which we connect, right, we actually know that, and this is, what's really tragic is that things like loneliness are just at epidemic proportions in our communities. And church addresses that, that whole idea of bringing people together, right? Relationships. This is where it starts to get really deep. At the end of life, do people sit there and say, hey, you know what? I did all these had fun times. I was all smiles and giggles and parties and I achieved all this stuff. No, it's not about that. They talk about they want their people around them, their tribe, their community. And so relationships is where it starts to get really deep. But there's a deeper level once again. So P, positive emotion. E, engagement. A, achievement, right? These are all good things, go after them. But R, relationships. Hey, prioritize that. Because the science says this is where it starts to get deep in terms of truly living an abundant life. But if you want the deepest level entirely, write down what really, really starts to make us humans sing. And I find this fascinating coming from the secular psychology literature, is that we need M in our life. And what do you think M might stand for? Money. We've got money up the front here. Good start. Meaning. This is it. Meaning. We need, well done, brother. And a young person at that, you've already figured this out. This is a good thing. You know what the science says? We humans need to experience meaning. And what I'm so intrigued by, what secular, right? This is non-Christian secular psychology says is what we humans need in order to experience meaning. This is Martin Seligman's quote, verbatim. He says, meaning comes from belonging to and serving something bigger than yourself. Isn't that profound? From belonging to, feeling that you belong to, and serving something bigger than yourself. And the secular psychologists, they talk about how to experience that. That might look like belonging to a community group or whatever it might be, the local, sporting club. And serving might be, working for some cause that's beneficial to others. But you know what? What I've come to discover is that the Christian message, the Christian ethos, is, I think, the quintessential version of how we encounter that. When you understand, right, if you really want to live a truly abundant life, the P-E-A-R, they're great. But at the very heartbeat, if you start to recognize that there is the God, right, the creator of the universe, who actually has his eye on you, accepts you and embraces you and you are part of his family, right? You belong to something ridiculously bigger than yourself. But not only that, this is what I find, and this is my challenge to you, is not only does that just create a remarkable identity in us all, when we realise that we are loved, right, and we are treasured, and we are a kid of the kingdom, right, a child of the Creator. But not only that, he also says, and by the way, I've got a special part for you to play. And he's got a special part for every single one of us to play. When you understand that you have a role to play, to serve, right, to belong to serve, contribute to something bigger than yourself, that's when life goes from here to here, right? What does it take to truly flourish? Positive emotion. Yep, I hope you experience a lot of that, but you know what? It's not going to last forever. Engagement. I hope there is stuff that you love to do just for the sake of it. Do it, right? Reward yourself. Take time to do it. But realise that the fun times can't always last. Achieve things. Yes, there are great things to do, to learn, to master. Do that. That's worthwhile and productive. But realise that you can get over the top with that and start to neglect the other more important things, which are your relationships, and most of all, that deep sense of meaning that God speaks into our life. My prayer for you is that you experience, right, in a deep and meaningful way, what it looks like to live abundantly. God has all the answers.